Hi, everybody. This is Dennis Black. Welcome to the Black and Wyatt Records podcast, where we talk to artists who've worked with us on record or behind the scenes. This week, artist and filmmaker Mike McCarthy talks with Oxford, Mississippi musician and author Tyler Keith about his latest record, Hell to Pay, his book, The Mark of Cain, and other projects.
Is Tyler Keith by way of Florida, by way of Mississippi, by way of Memphis? Might want to throw in, I don't know, what any other countries?
That's probably it. Yeah.
Is that it? I
Yeah.
thought you were in Australia for a while.
No. I have relatives. My families came from Scotland and Ireland, I guess.
Can you prove that?
My dad did a bunch of that stuff. Yeah.
He proved it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Proved
all right.
it. They got a Keith Castle over there and stuff.
A keep?
Keith.
Oh,
Like
a
the
Keith
Keith
Castle.
Castle.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
Do you still have it?
I don't think so.
Tell us what you do exactly.
Well,
artfully, I guess.
artfully. Well, I try to make stuff like I like to make records and I like to take photographs. I like to write stuff.
Mhm.
Probably stems from being like a little kid in the Baptist church with you get the little pamphlet and then you just draw on it the whole time and write stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know. You probably know what I mean. I don't know.
Well, your dad was a preacher.
Well, he was more like a lay preacher. He was actually a dentist.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. He did some lay preaching.
What does lay preaching mean?
That means just like he wasn't an actual pastor, but if they needed a fill in every now and then, like
So you grew up in a Baptist church in Florida.
yeah, and religious school. You know, they didn't call them evangelicals back then.
Mm-hmm.
They were just kind of like,
Explain.
well, just like there was no rock and roll or dancing allowed at the school. I went to a regular Southern Baptist church. That was like very liberal compared to the school.
Mm-hmm.
But you had Bible class, and and I went from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Well, but instead of
Right.
marijuana, they found your Chuck Berry records.
Right. Well, my parents were into rock and roll,
Oh.
but my dad was actually into bluegrass and stuff. I had a bluegrass band.
But bluegrass will get you into heaven.
That will get you into
But
heaven.
rock and roll, maybe not.
And I was learned to play bluegrass guitar and stuff, but by the time you're like 11 or so, I wanted to be like Pete Townsend.
What year were you born?
I was born in 1970.
Okay, so you're the same age as a lot of people that I worked with in the 90s, like Delana and
Yeah.
the Starlet Crowd and Kim and all those people, late 60s, early 70s. And then, of course, you catch MTV with that certain
Mhm.
period. But what did you get turned on to, or how did you actually begin to find the real stuff? Was it when you moved to Mississippi?
Well, no,
You moved to go to school, right?
I did move to go to school. I had an older brother and older sister, and they would send me stuff from college that and like also in high school in Pensacola, there were a lot of all ages punk rock shows.
Mhm.
There was a lot of there was a place called the DMZ, which was an old country bar called the Fire and Fiddle, and they just spray painted DMZ on there and would have punk rock shows in there, and then
What you did, or you would go to shows?
I would go to shows.
Mhm.
I tried to have a band with some friends. We had a little band, punk rock band, but it called Meager Existence. But we never actually played out.
Is
And
that your hardcore name?
Yeah, I didn't come up with it, but I couldn't play fast because I was like kind of into like the Who and stuff somewhat. I loved the 60s music since I was little,
Mhm.
and I loved punk rock, but I couldn't play fast. And then,
But you transcended the Who eventually and went, and it led where they took you
yeah,
into other 60s R&B.
right. Yeah, and like I'd always was. I remember finding the Nuggets album as a kid. I did a lot of thrift store stuff in high school, and like there was, and there was like
You found nuggets at a thrift store?
I did, and there's in the 1986 you could find stuff like that,
Mhm.
And there was also a big flea market that we would go to that had these records that were kind of like just like almost there was just like a tin roof over it. There was no, so they were kind of like they would be kind of rotten almost, but the vinyl would be fine,
Right.
and it was $1, you know, so you
Right.
could find a lot of records.
Well, when did you move to Oxford?
Well, I came to Mississippi College on a track scholarship in the fall of
Track
'80.
scholarship.
Cross country and track. I was a runner, you know, and then I had an older brother there that was better than I would ever be as a runner.
You're talking about Ole Miss in Oxford,
And,
Mississippi.
well, this was Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi, Jackson.
Oh,
I went
okay.
there for 2 years, and
What years were those?
that was the fall of '88 through the fall of like '90.
Okay.
And there was a place, WC Don's, there that had a lot of punk rock bands, and went to a lot of those shows. There was also a place called Subway Lounge that was a blues club that was, you know, like midnight to 6 type club. And I saw a lot of blues stuff there. And then I came to Oxford. I was living in Oxford in the summers from starting in '89. My sister had come up to Oxford. And there was a lot of there was a place called Sid and Harry's. And that '89, I saw Chilton there, Alex Chilton there. And there was a lot of great bands. They started having blues night, which was Thursday nights at this place, and they started having Junior Kimbrough and R.L. Burnside and you know, Booba Barnes and like Frank Frost and Sam
Would Charlie
Carr.
Feathers be there?
Charlie Feathers, I never saw him there, but
Now, were you
and,
still into sports or running?
no, I really wasn't into that in college. But my parents, my dad, they didn't have any money, so it was like I wanted to get away from home. So I'll go to school, and I started drinking a lot of beer, you know, and it was like so. And
Doesn't that make you run faster?
no, it makes you run very slow.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I lost my scholarship, and I was a passenger in a few car accidents at the time, and sustained an injury. And the coach was basically like, "You can run in the spring, but not under scholarship. If you do well, you can come back." And I was like, "Nah." You know, it was kind of like, to me, running was kind of like it's a real individual sport. It's real in your own mind type thing, you know, like. And I really liked it when I was healthy and young. I really liked, you know, I think it's the same kind of experience as playing a rock and roll show, sort of. Like you're in your own brain. You got to do this.
You're living your potential.
You live in the second as well. You know, just one foot in front of the other.
Like you're playing guitar.
Exactly. That's what's so great about live music, playing live. It's the only time you really live in the second. What's coming next?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's just, you ever played a show and you like at the end it was like, what do we even play? You don't even remember. Like, did we play such and such a song? Like, oh yeah, we played that.
I don't remember what we talked about today.
Yeah, I know. But
well,
you know,
so you're in Oxford.
I met a guy named Paul Tucker there. You remember Paul? And he had a band. He was trying to start something up. And he was like, "Do you play bass?" And I lied. I was like, "Yeah." But I had learned stand-up bass. But I started playing with him in a band called the Sky Pilots.
Sky Pilots.
Yeah.
How many years did that go?
That went about 2 years, 2.5 years. And we were coming up here and we played with the Compulsive Gamblers. And that kind of blew my mind, really, watching them. Like, I just like, you can have like horns and stuff.
So tracing it back, 91 is the year that you sort of discovered Memphis, or the garage scene, as it's called. I don't know what else to me it's a rock and roll scene. But
it was rock and roll scene.
But it was
also like the Grifters were
Yeah.
really great at that point too, and
yeah,
you know,
the decade was starting.
The country rockers and stuff, and Cav Fowler. There was a lot just weirdness that I was just, and Memphis looked like, still does, like a noir film. You know, these back streets. It was, and I loved that, and started going to Shangri-La Records
And did
and
you catch
stuff. And
Antenna Club, or were you
yeah,
all
we
about?
played at the Antenna a lot.
Okay, so you were there before Barristers sort of took over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and into Barristers, kind of right when that started coming out. But
So
and there
you
was
came
having
up.
both
So the Sky
Pilots.
Pilots came up and opened for the Gamblers. How did y'all know Jack or Greg or?
We were coming to the show. We just started coming to shows up here and hanging out at the Shangri-La Records. Well, I bought that single that you with your amazing cover art,
The Gamblers.
you know, and like I just thought they were so really great band and like the coolest people I'd ever seen, you know. Like,
well, they were also able then to come to Oxford and play.
Yeah, and we were switching out shows. There was a place called the Hoka Theater that I was working with.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working there at the Hoka with Ron Shapiro, and he would I would be like, "Hey, can I have some bands here next Friday or something?" Like, yeah, nope. Wait till after the movie or whatever, because they were showing film. They were showing movies.
Yeah.
So after like the 10 o'clock show, we could have bands, or if he didn't have,
So were you really at the heart of a scene that exploded, or I say exploded, happened, however it happened in Oxford, that would define sort of like mirror what was happening in Memphis with the Gamblers and then the Oblivions and Impala and the Grifters and all those kind of things?
Yeah, somewhat. We were coming up here a lot, and then there was a band that was a 3-piece band that we played a couple of shows with in around '93, early '93, called the Neckbones.
Mm-hmm.
They were a 3-piece band, and then they wanted to have another singer and a guitar player, as well as and also during the summer. These guys were in college still.
At Ole Miss.
And 2 of the guys went home for the summer.
Now tell me who these people are.
This was David Boyer. Forrest Hughes was the drummer, and Robbie Alexander was the bass player, and David Boyer was the guitar player. Both David and Forrest were future members of the Cool Jerks, with Scott Rogers and Jack Oblivion. So I moved in with Forrest for the summer. And they had their stuff set up in the attic, my attic room. There was no air conditioning, so it was like.
So you lived off campus.
I lived off campus. I never lived on the Ole Miss campus.
Okay.
But,
so you were allowed to have make noise.
Yeah.
In '93.
'93, and it was a lot. It was kind of like a lot smaller and really cheap. And
what were you bringing to the band?
Well, like. Forrest was the singer and he was the drummer, and he's a really powerful drummer and a great singer. So I think he wanted a little break, and I was brand new. I was just starting to write songs, so me and Forrest and another couple of people had just one night went up to Bruce Watson's studio from later of Fat Possum and recorded a couple, like 4 songs. So I think it was kind of like Stooges kind of style stuff, like and real kind of that kind of thing.
Why did you? Is that what you brought to them? Was the Stooges' interest, or was that something they had already?
I mean, they had it as well, but like.
Why were you guys into stuff which might have been considered marginalized or very nominal as far as interest?
Well, like those guys, as well as I had, they had played in high school, and like we were all into the Replacements and Husker Du, and also like music nerds, so read every book there was, and you find out the rabbit hole type things.
But you're in Oxford too, which is an intellectual haven.
Right. And actually, I forgot to mention that the main reason I came to Oxford was there was a writer in residence there, Barry Hanna, who's an amazing, he's kind of a short story genius. And I took his classes, and that was kind of what I was wanting to do. But
to be a writer even then.
Yeah.
More so, really, you you were channeling being a book writer more so than a songwriter, or they were
Yes,
okay,
definitely. And
okay.
then like I kind of happened across Paul Tucker, and I was in the student union, and I saw him, and we had kind of known each other, or he knew some. We knew some of the same people from Jack. He was from Jackson, Mississippi, so we knew some of the same people, and we're like, "Hey," and he was like, "Do you play bass?" I was like, "Yeah." I think that's
So the neck bones form or
yeah,
become a 5-piece the same year that the
a
Oblivions
4-piece.
4-piece.
Just about the same as the Oblivions, about the
Right.
same time, yes.
So
And the Oblivions actually were the first. They let us open for them up here at the Antenna,
mm-hmm.
and they paid us a lot.
No.
They gave us like $250 after, because the show was packed, and it was like they were like, "Here's your cut." I'm like, "What?"
I think the rate is still $250.
It is. It's still $5 at the door.
Well, okay.
But
So and then we were making movies, and I
definitely,
showed
yeah,
Teenage Tupelo at the
yeah,
Hoka, and you
yeah,
guys, the Neckbones, played.
right.
And that was the very first screening of Teenage Tupelo in August 95, August 5th, 95.
But we started recording up here. We recorded up here first with Jared McStay, because we started playing with the Simple Ones up here
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
Uh-huh.
Which I think at first were the Simple Tones, and
Right.
they became the Simple Ones. And they played with us at Hoka several times, and they were one of my favorite bands here.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared recorded us at his house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he had a little basement
In
we,
Midtown.
in Midtown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we put out our own uh, for a CD called "Pay the Rent," and then
What year was that?
that was probably 94, 95. But
I remember you mentioned the Stooges earlier. I remember me and Kim and Victoria Renard and the guys in Impala. Trying to think who else. Sharon Selden, maybe, a friend of Vic's. We all piled in my car and we drove to Oxford because maybe, I don't know whose house it was. Maybe it was your house. There was a house party going on, and you guys were playing.
yeah,
But when you weren't playing, the Stooges Fun House was on the turntable. And I'd never heard and never will ever hear Fun House like I heard it at your house.
yeah,
Like that again. And that was really the first time I think I'd ever really hung out with you
yeah.
to any degree.
That's right.
And thank you for
Well, it's funny because at that time I got my first car when I was about 21 in Oxford for $500. It was a Datsun 510 hatchback, and I had this Funhouse cassette, got stuck in the tape deck for about 2 years, but I didn't care.
2 years.
Yeah, until the car burned up and on the side of the road outside of Birmingham.
Playing Funhouse.
Playing Funhouse, and I pushed it into this Christian school parking lot and took anything that had my name on it out of the car and just left it. And then we were driving by a year later to go play in like Atlanta or something, and it was still in the parking lot. I always thought that was hilarious. But yeah.
Tell me your Iggy story you told me a while back.
My sister was in tax law school at NYU at that time, and I went up to visit her. And
people that are planning careers like that fascinate me.
I know, she's brilliant.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Iggy is signing his record at the Tower Records on Broadway down there or something. And I'm like, going down there to see Iggy,
Sure.
It's like American Caesar record. And like, I was waiting in line. I got up there, and like, I guess he could tell I wasn't from, and he was like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Well, I'm from, Oxford, Mississippi." And he's like, "Well, oh yeah, no shit. I just was recorded this in New Orleans and had never been to Mississippi, and I drove up to Natchez and had to drive over to Faraday to see where Jerry Lee was born." I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Well, my friend Bruce Watson's studio at the time was called Zombie Birdhouse after the Iggy album." And I was like, "Well, my friend has got a studio, and they're recording a lot of this blues people in North Mississippi, specifically Junior Kimbrough, who's like, to me, the Stooges of the blues. You know, it's like these riffs, and he's like, "Oh, I'll check it out." And so
Yeah.
the next week, Iggy calls Bruce, and Bruce thought it was me because he was like, "Oh yeah, whatever." He's like, "No, this is actually Iggy." And so they ended up, Junior ended up touring with them.
Tell me though, pick back up if you would, please, with your Memphis Oxford kind of love affair type thing you're doing, and the neck bones are coming back and forth. Can you lead me through a little timeline there of how the neck bones finished up and the records that you did, and then
Okay.
build into the stuff that you put out on Black and White or things in
Sure.
between? Yeah.
Well, quickly, you know, we started playing, like we were playing these big shows in Oxford, and the Fat Possum label did not have any white rock and roll acts.
Mm-hmm.
And like they were coming to these shows, and they, you know, just they were just kind of really exciting, and they signed us up. You know, like the original founder of Fat Possum was Peter Lee, and then Matthew Johnson took over at some point. I don't know that whole story, but anyway, we made 2 records with them. We had some contentious relationship there, but
Mm-hmm.
and then basically sometime around the year 2000, our 1999, our bass player kind of quit, moved on, and Forrest, our drummer, was living up here, and David Boyer was living up here, and then they were getting married and like starting a family and getting jobs and stuff and doing stuff, and moved up to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of obsessing about songs and stuff. I had a bunch of songs. So somewhere around 2000, I just our last record on Fat Possum barely came out because this is our second fist fight with the label owners, which it's not really a good way to get along with. Literally, yeah, literally.
What is it? The whole band was fist fighting?
Pretty much the second time, yeah. I don't know if I want to go into
Right.
all the details, but basically we didn't have a label.
Yeah.
We didn't really have a bass player, and so I just kind of recorded an album with. There was a band in Oxford, a great band called Blue Mountain, really great, exceptional band. I'm very close friends with them. And Kerry Hudson, the singer, guitar player, his cousin had a studio and was starting a label in South Mississippi. So I basically got Blue Mountain to back me up on a record, and I just called that band the Preacher's Kids because I really didn't have a band, but they were kind of wild. It was kind of Oxford was like at peak wildness at that point.
What do you mean?
Well, just I mean,
what year?
This was probably 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of, and the bars closed early, so there was a lot of late night parties, and there were 4 or 5 people. So basically, it was every night of extreme, and I was just 29, if it would be 30, and like I was just kind of thought I was invincible, and just had a lot of. It was just like a rock and roll thing going on there with that.
But you hadn't started writing books or anything, or
no? You know, I'd written some short stories in college, and I continued to write some things, but and my writing teacher Hannah had said you're gonna have to choose between songs and stories, you know. And I became obsessed with songs.
That's what they told me in grad school, and I didn't want to choose because I saw because of That's All Right in Blue Moon of Kentucky, I saw a hybrid nature to pop culture.
Right.
So it's like, you know, why do you have to? Why can't you involve all your interest into one big melting pot of like an idea?
Yeah.
It may not have commercial value.
Right. Well, I've come to realize not much has commercial value.
Well,
but I'm kind of you know, art for art's sake. I'm not a good ender of things, you know. Like I just kind of
like this interview.
Yeah, I'd like to ramble on. So, but then I kind of
so somebody has to come to you in the band and say, Tyler, It's over.
The drummer actually had been in Blue Mountain, and he joined back when Blue Mountain we weren't really doing anything, and they had a reunion thing. So he started doing that, and I just kind of stopped playing, and then started another band instead of breaking up the other one.
Right.
So, because I didn't know how to do that.
And what was the other band?
That was the Apostles, and we just started as a three-piece. I really didn't have any type of ideas for it. I just wanted to play.
What year would that be?
That was 2009, maybe. At the same time, I went back to school and finished my undergrad, and then applied for the MFA program in writing and did not get accepted. But they were only taking like 2 or 3 people a year, and I did not get in there. But I got into the Southern Studies Master's program.
What's the difference?
Southern Studies is like it's an interdisciplinary thing, but there was a big focus at the on documentary expression, like photography and documentary film.
So visuals,
as well as you learn the oral history and things like that, and Southern. It's like Southern history, literature, culture, all that, food. That's. So I got a master's in that at that time. Got the master's degree, and I enjoyed it. It was great, and they didn't really tell me what to do with it or how to get some work for it.
How to get a job.
Although almost everyone else that I went to grad school did immediately get work and something. I think I just have a little bit of a fear of like, hey, here's a job for you to be here every day, 9 to 5.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I was afraid of actually getting a quote real job. I'd already at that point probably had close to 20 years in the restaurant business. But at the time I was working at the steak restaurant in Oxford that went out of business. And I'd heard this quote from this writer, Robert Stone, that unemployment is the poor man's Guggenheim. So I decided, like, I'm going to collect unemployment and just, like, write and play music every day, like a job, And at that time, and I started doing, it was like $130 a week. Like, it was barely enough to pay my rent and eat. But I was actually really happy doing that. And I wrote this, like, biker musical at that time, and
what was that called?
It was called The Outlaw Biker, and we performed it a couple years later in Oxford and filmed it, and we did and published. The same publisher who published the novel just put a book form out of it. I have a copy for you. But,
okay. Well, okay.
And so that was so we did that. I did that after grad school, and then started making these Apostles records. Recorded our first one with J.D. Mark. Remember Jim Mark? He passed away, but and then so that's basically. And then I made The Last Drag.
Now we're jumping ahead here a couple of years.
A couple of years, yeah.
Okay.
The Last Drag, I guess, it started in like 2018. We were gonna do some Neckbone sessions, like get back together, and the date got fucked up or something. I don't know. It was probably my fault, but the other guys couldn't make it, so I just went in there, and with the engineer Bronson too was the drummer, so we just made some stuff, made like 4 songs, and then whenever they would have downtime in the studio, we would go in there and record, and then we had like 10 songs. Like, oh, this is really good. I really like this. And we just played everything on it. And like, I had demoed these songs at home, and actually had met Robert a few times up here at shows. He had come to some of our Apostle shows, and I just, I knew he was putting out great Memphis stuff. And so I just kind of sent him the stuff, and he was like, yeah, he was really liked it. And I think kind of like grandpa'd us in sort of the Memphis, even though not technically from Memphis. So,
Right. Well, and you're the first person interviewed on The Power of Hour.
That's right.
So, but, you know, Black and White is formed in 2018. You guys cut this in 2018.
That's when we started the sessions. Yeah.
So it's only a matter of time. And I know your name had come up quite a bit in referring to who was going to come out on the label. And then there was that only Memphis rock and roll. But you said, you got grandpa'd in.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Hail to grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it is always kind of considered, I'm not the first to say this or anything, but Memphis is like the capital of Mississippi.
Coming to Memphis, like you said, man, it was like the glowing, beacon on the hill. Yeah. And I don't know that's, I mean, I know everything has to change, but why does it always have to change for the worst?
Well, I think that, like kind of like New Orleans is like, and Memphis, the South, there's a lot of shit went down here. And you got to someday pay for it and deal with it. And we just refuse to do that in any meaningful way. And it's just like, until you do that, it doesn't get better. The way that culture is experienced has changed completely, I feel like, for younger people in a way. And that's not their fault. I'm not even blaming them. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just the way it is. I think like there was a lot less. I mean, when I went to college, I didn't have a phone most of the time. I didn't talk to my parents. Like on Thanksgiving or something, I would, it was a real break as a young person. You went away, you didn't have any money, and you were on your own, and it was good for me like that.
So catch us up to then how does it work out that you then put out a second record, Hell to Pay, on Black and White? And I want to get into talking about the book a little bit too. But should you talk about these first? And does the book have anything to do? Were you writing the book in between these records?
I was writing the book at the same time as I was writing a lot of this music. So I had a bunch of backlogs. So I wanted I wanted to write a novel, and I started writing it. My thesis was about the panhandle of Florida, where my dad's side of the family came from. I was like 7th generation Floridian, which is kind of rare. So I interviewed a bunch of people, shot a bunch of made a little film down there, took a bunch of photographs, and I talked to a lot of people down there, and I had a lot of material and my grandfather, who I was very close to as a kid.
What's his name?
His name was Vernon Keith, James Vernon Keith. People call him JV, but and like his father was murdered down in Holmes County, Florida, when he was 2 years old, and he kind of came up real hard in that area of Florida, and so I did a lot of, it was kind of like this frontier almost. Like Florida is like almost more like a frontier than like your sort of typical southern, like plantation area, because there wasn't a lot of the farming wasn't like the Delta of Mississippi or something. It was a lot of sand. Like in Holmes County, like there was like two kinds of people, sort of. Like you were either like a dirt farming Christian type that didn't really laugh at or you were an outlaw bootlegger. There was a lot. The Chalcahatchee River there flows right into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's this like spring-fed river. So there was a lot of moonshine bootlegging stuff there, and it was kind of like this frontier. I mean, it's kind of like almost like a Wild West type area.
So we're talking about this book you've written called The Mark of Cain.
Yeah,
it's been out now. What? How long is it?
It came out November 2022, so it's been out just over a year.
Tell me about the publisher and how you got
the publisher is Tim and Susan Lee, they're in a rock and roll band called Bark, and they had a band called the Tim Lee Three, and Tim Lee was from Jackson, Mississippi, and he was in a seminal band, rock and roll power pop band from Jackson called the Windbreakers back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to play with like Let's Active and Swimming Pool Cues and stuff. And he wrote an amazing, the DVs, and he wrote an amazing autobiography called I Saw a Dozen Faces and Rocked Them All, Diary of a Never Was. And he published it himself and did well at it, you know, sold a lot of books, and they wanted to put out some other stuff. And I was friends with them, and actually Susan did all the layout for this artwork for these records.
Aha.
So
and it's a great job.
Yeah, it looks great. She's great if you ever need any work. And I wrote a first draft, and my friend Ace Atkins, who's a great writer, writes a lot about Memphis and Mississippi, and he read it for me and gave me a lot of notes to stuff to do. And I was old enough, and I decided like I'm going to take people's advice, what they say. They know this. And my friend, the Lisa Howarth's a great novelist. Melissa Ginsburg, a great novelist and poet from Oxford. And Max Hipp, who's in my band, is a great writer. I gave it to everybody that would read it. A lot of people didn't read it. I don't blame them. You know, it's a lot to ask. A lot of people did it. They gave me notes. I did everything they said for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And, so
it didn't affect the story, though. Did it?
Didn't affect the story, not much.
They're talking about structure or craft.
Structure and just, grammar, spelling, all that. And some structure, like Ace, I only had like 45,000 words or something. He was like, you need to add this whole section, like where he goes back to Holmes County in the book. I didn't even have that. It was more about this halfway house.
At what point did you hit a wall, or at what point did the characters save you? Did the characters tell you what they needed to do?
Yeah, kind of in some way, in some sense. But like when I started this, I had my big problem in the past writing was I would write a little bit and say, this is awful. And just like, and I decided I'm going to finish this, whatever it is. I'm going to get to the end, then I'm going to work on it. Because I didn't want to believe, writing is rewriting. It's like, that's not sexy or whatever.
It's
true. Work.
It's true.
It's true. And I decided whatever it takes, I'm going to get to the end of this,
Right.
And
what does that mean, though? The character is going to have fulfillment, or the story's going to have
the story's
plot?
going to come to a beginning, a middle, and end. That's one thing I learned.
But did the ending that you thought you had at the beginning, was that the ending you had at the end?
Not necessarily, no. What I did, and I had work, so I would work, and then I had in my job now, I had a lot of downtime. When I had to go back to work, I would obsessively make outlines about what I thought was going to happen, and I made an outline even before I started. It changed somewhat, but the ending was somewhat similar. And but to me, this outlining was very important because it kept the story going in my head. Like I've never. I would hear writers talk about just sitting down with a blank page. Like I can't. That's not me. So
at some point, does what you're writing as a novel become better used as a song lyric?
Sometimes, and
Like
sometimes as a distraction. Like I'll write a song in the on the blank page on the other side, and
with chords or just words.
Sometimes both. A lot of times now, like I'll work at my desk, and then I usually have my guitar and amp plugged in. I live out in the country, so if I get kind of stir crazy, I'll sit down and play guitar for a while. I can play really loud at my house. So I'll do that. And if I have an idea for a song or if I like the riff or something, I'll record it on my phone now. And then I write a lot of ideas, and to mix and match later. But I definitely like the distraction of something else. And like playing guitar for me has always been like, I've never like practiced scales or any of that shit. But I could like to play guitar for a couple of hours sometimes.
Well, what's the new
Yeah.
book?
Well, I've got a new book that's called Damaged right now. And it's kind of a teenage punk rock thriller set in like 1987, Pensacola, Florida.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of like it's like the main characters are these three teenagers, like two kind of punk rock girls, sort of, and a guy, this punk rock kid. They're kind of, and like just sort of like how music and punk rock is, and these ideas of art and culture and things can sort of save you in certain sense or create your own identity that's helpful, but then there's always a danger lurking there, like I you know, abuse and so forth.
Is meager existence going to factor into Damaged?
Yes, sort of.
Let me ask you about these two records real quick,
Okay.
because Black and White is our sponsor.
Sure, yeah.
So we got to cover our ground here. Tell me real quick, because we may play some cuts off the albums.
Okay.
On the first album here that we put out, The Last Drag. What are your thoughts on why is the track list that way? What are your standout songs? What are your favorites?
Oh, let's see.
Is this this is not the order they were recorded in? I mean, what
not
was
exactly.
the reason?
No, like I always kind of thought, put a lot of time in sequencing. I've always been a fan. As much as I love punk rock, I've always loved the Rolling Stones as one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time.
I thought you were going to say one of the greatest sequencers.
They
of
are
songs
great sequencers. They are.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. Like like Let It Bleed.
Yes.
And like those, I think that's like a perfectly sequenced album.
Right.
And like
Love in Vain has to be second.
It does.
Yeah.
And there's, it starts out with what is it? Is it Give Me Shelter or like anyway? I've always thought a lot about sequencing, and you need a flow, and you need to put your favorite songs in certain places.
Yeah.
I like all the songs on here a lot in some ways, and it was partially because I didn't think about anything that I didn't really. Two things, like I had demoed all these songs at home, almost all of these, so I knew the parts that I wanted on there. The guitar part, usually I have a guitar player in the band, and I don't tell them what to play. That's why, they're there to play what you like. I might suggest something, but here I played everything the way I wanted it, and also in a band, you sort of gear things towards the strengths of that band or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this I just liked I just didn't care really, and I just made what I wanted, and I sort of like I kind of, part of the Last Drag idea was like, this might be my last record. Like I don't
Your last race.
It might be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It turned out it wasn't, but
Yeah.
Born Again Virgin is a very fun song to play. But the thing is, like, I had a person that reviewed it and said, this tongue-in-cheek song. It's like, no, this is not. I was at a point where, like, I don't want to mess around. I want to find, I'm going to wait, somebody I really like to get involved, or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I love the drag racing albums of the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the reason for the cover, like,
Sure.
It was just kind of a joke, but I like
it's one of the best black and white covers. It's very striking, and it speaks to the subset of rock and roll ideology, 20th century stuff. It's great. But were there any songs that you recorded for Last Drag that wound up on this record, on Hell to Pay?
We were playing some of these by the time, I still had recorded some of these at home during this time, like,
Mm-hmm.
and Ghostwriter had actually been recorded at Easley Studio with the Preacher's Kids. But it burned up in the fire, and we lost our record at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Easley fire, and
lost your whole record?
Yes, we lost our whole record.
What year was that fire?
2006, maybe.
Okay. On Dedrick over there off Lamar?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I put all my money into it and everything. We got like, we got hotels up here, and we came up, and like it burned up. And there was a guy in Oxford, Andrew Ratcliffe, it's like, just come into my studio and record it.
Is that not a story? I mean,
and this is a great story, but a terrible story. We were having a lot of bad luck at this time, and that was the culmination. And that was kind of when I said, you know what, I'm kind of done. I'm going to put this out. And there was a version of Ghostwriter that survived from it, but it sounded really, really bad. But I put it on the record anyway, and I always regret it.
On this record?
No. I put it on we put out a Preacher's Kids record.
Okay.
And we re-recorded everything, except I really liked the performance of the one at Easley, and we had like just a burned disc of it, and it sounded really terrible. And I put it on there anyway, and I always wanted to re-record it and do it justice, because I like that song, Ghostwriter.
So this version that's on the Black and White record,
we re-recorded it.
Re-recorded it.
Yeah, re-recorded it. I wanted to save it because I love that song, or I enjoy playing that song, and I wanted to sort of give it a second life.
And but is there any song that you favor here, or like you're sequencing, or?
And Edge of the City is kind of about like a guy who lives kind of. I was thinking about 78 coming in when it turns into Lamar, kind of like.
I've traveled Lamar into Mississippi for 40 years or whatever. It's unchanged.
It's unchanged.
It's still
I know, it's weird.
And like I've had people come to me and like maybe say, well, hey, could you come up with some concept, sculpture, whatever, to make like Sam Cooper coming into Memphis, more hospitable. But nobody's worried about airways from the airport, and nobody is sure as hell not worried about Lamar.
Yeah,
this is what you're getting when you come into town.
And I did mention the Lamar Motel in there, although I've never been there myself.
Well, hell to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
I live on the edge of the city with the cockroaches and trash. To me, it looks so pretty, just like a nuclear attack. I live on the edge of the city. That's where I get my kicks. I went to see the Pop Shot Kill. They had sold in my cousin's bike. I went down to the Lansky and got myself a paisley tie. I live on the edge of the city. That's where I get my kicks. I shot a man in the face that looked like Rain the Land. I hold up at Lamar Motel till I make my getaway plan. I live on the edge of the city. That's where I get my kicks. I jumped in the back of the truck. Yeah, headed down 49. I jumped out in Faraday. I'll be in New Orleans by 9. I live on the edge of the city. That's where I get my kicks. I live on the edge of the city with the cockroaches and trash. To me, it looks so pretty, just like a nuclear attack. I live on the edge of the city. That's where I get my kicks.
Well, hey, man, I thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
into the very first podcast episode of Black and Wyatt's Power of Hour.
Thank you, man. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. I really enjoyed it.
I
Thank
was like encouraging you to ramble on.
And I really love Black and White, what they're doing, and I appreciate so much being on this label. It means a lot. And there's so much great music coming out on it.
Is there a third
Your
record
band?
for you?
At the moment, I'm just kind of working on some songs, but I don't really have anything. I'm trying to work on this book and some other thing.
What about scoring your own books?
I've been doing a lot of instrumental stuff, and I did that for some documentaries. I ended up the master's program. They ended up having an MFA in documentary expression a couple of years after I graduated, and they contacted me like, "Why don't you come back it's in the same program. Just do a project. So yeah,
So you got some stuff happening
I have some
for
stuff
2023 or 24. What year are we in?
happening.
24.
I'm not sure. Is it
I'm not either.
1999.
It's barely started. But
Yeah.
thank you for coming on. And
Thank
we're
you.
going to play some of your music, and I'm going to film you in your natural environment tomorrow. And we're going to put
Okay.
out a little doc of our own, and then we'll put it
Awesome.
on YouTube and go from there.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You've just heard Tyler Keith interviewed by Mike McCarthy on the Black and White Records podcast. Tyler's albums, Last Drag and Hell to Pay, are available on Black and White vinyl records and may be purchased at blackandwhiterecords.com. The Hell to Pay video mini-documentary mentioned in the podcast was filmed and edited by Mike McCarthy and may be viewed on the Black and White Records YouTube channel. Join us next time for the Black and White Records podcast.